all that girl can remember months later is there was a Pokemon Go knockoff story in there. Like, that's just yep, here we go. Hold up. Apparently very scary for these toxic masculinity stans. She's gonna die. It's insane, right? Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jewel, and in the wise words of the amazing, talented, brilliant Taylor Swift, it is enchanting to have you here. I just recently, aka yesterday, finished my Taylor Swift reading challenge. Here it is in its entirety. It's so beautiful. Around this time last year is when I really started to like obsessively get into reading, I guess you could say. And so because I was also like an obsessive Swiftie, and obviously still am, seeing as the hoodie, the intro, and the Taylor Lautner cutout that I made for the Speak Now Taylor's version release, I decided to make a Taylor Swift reading challenge for myself to complete this year. Basically, for each of her 10 albums or eras or whatever, I made 3 prompts for a total of 30 different books on this little challenge. And I figured that a good way to wrap up my year, essentially, was to go over this. Near the end of the year, I'm gonna do like an actual like reading wrap up, but I just wanted to like go over my little challenge because it's so fun and cute, and I'm just so excited to share because I've been spending the entire year completing this since I started January 1st, saying as the first book of the year is actually on here in the Lover album, and then my most recent book that I just finished in the Speak Now album, there, Speak Now. So from January 1st to December 24th, I have been working on this, and I'm just so excited to share my little Swiftie, pizzazzy, brow stuff. I have quite a bit of the books that I used for this challenge on my floor in the piles by era here, but some of them I read on my Kindle via audiobook or have loaned to a friend, or in some cases even unhauled because I just didn't like the books enough to keep them. So if that is the case, I will not be holding them up for you, but I have quite a bit that I will be able to hold up and show you guys. Also, if I am looking down, I have my mom's iPad right here to stalk myself on Goodreads, because while I would love to say that I remember everything about every single one of these books, I just don't. There are many books that I don't remember a single thing about, so I'm gonna need my review and also the description on Goodreads to just remind myself what the book is about. But with that being said, let's get started on this little adventure. So obviously the best place to start would be with her debut album. So the 3 prompts that I used for that was a debut novel, a book with a green cover, and a book that takes place in the country. I finished this section on September 10th, it looks like. The first book that I read for a debut novel was... Hi, me editing this, sorry if there's any background noise, but I did not realize while I was filming until later on, and I think the folklore era, that the boycott happening for, I think, S&M publishing? SMP? I don't know this publisher. I'm very uneducated, so I heavily encourage you doing research on it, as I'm going to do more research on it. I'm just like slightly aware that this is happening, but don't really know the exact cause at the moment. But as soon as I finish filming this clip and editing, I'm planning on doing some more research, and I heavily suggest that you do too. But all I'm saying is that for this book and one other, I'm not going to be talking about them as I want to participate in this boycott. Just know that this book in particular, I didn't really like. I give it 3 stars anyways, so, but just heavily encourage you to participate as well. The next book for the prompt of a book with a green cover was The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. I think that's how you say the author's name. You'll find throughout this video that I have a really hard time at pronouncing authors' names and character names, so I apologize wholeheartedly in advance if I butcher a character's name or an author's name. It's just something that I'm not too great with. I'm not good at pronouncing things, but I'm trying my hardest, but please feel free to correct me if I do something wrong. Here is The Magic Fish. It is a beautiful, heartwarming graphic novel. We're following the main character where Qian, I think that's how you say his name, sorry, trying to figure out how to come out to his parents when they can't really speak English and they only really speak Vietnamese. Only that, but it tackles into fairy tales and folklore in a way. At the same time though, we're also following Qian's mom as she has like PTSD and flashbacks and stuff. So the comic itself actually has the different perspectives as different colors, which is very cool. Let me see. So the bluish purple color that you see here is when it's like one of the fairy tale or folklore stories that is being told that's like not with the actual like plot line, but it's just a little side story that connects to it. The red that you see right here is when we're following Tian and just kind of like the modern time, I guess, like what's actually happening. And in yellow is when you're having the mom's flashbacks. It's all very connected because you can see in this like span of 2 pages, it has all 3 of the different perspectives. So they're all very interconnected and it's just so interesting and amazing to read. So if you are a person who's been wanting to read more graphic novels or has wanted to start reading graphic novels, I heavily recommend picking up The Magic Fish. The artwork is just so gorgeous. The story is so beautiful. I personally gave it 5 stars and I just think that it's the queer and Vietnamese representation that is just needed in the world, I guess. I recommend this book with my entire being. Oh my god, another book that I recommend with my entire being. Let's go. So this one is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I used this book for the prompt of a book that takes place in the country, which is debatable, I suppose. I should probably say from the start that a lot of these prompts in the books I use for them are very debatable. Specifically in folklore, I'll go over one of those when I get there, but it's just that like some of them, the prompts that I chose, I couldn't find a good book that I wanted to use for that prompt, so I just found one I was interested that somewhat worked and went with it. And you know what? I would say this works for a book that takes place in the country. I'm like 90% sure it mentions like the country on the like back blurb or whatever, so I'm gonna see. Yes, a handsome country doctor. So it mentions the country on the back, so it counts. Anyways, all I really remember is that Nora is so me-coded because you guys know that one Taylor Swift song, You're Losing Me? We're both pathological people pleasers, you know? Also both mirror balls in a way, you know? Anyways, so basic summary of this book. Nora is a literary agent and she's like a very strict city girl. She starts out the book in the prologue saying like, you know those like stories where like a boy goes to a small cozy hometown and falls in love with a hometown country girl and then leaves his like strict girlfriend in the city. Yeah, I'm the girlfriend in the city. I've been broken up with that way because of that reason like multiple times. Like that's how the story is started out. And so we follow Nora as her sister Libby takes her to the small hometown that like the book that one of her clients wrote takes place in. Not only that, but she also meets Charlie, who is the editor who denied that book, like taking that book in. So those two, they don't really like each other, do they? So is it kind of like enemies to lovers, you're saying? Yes, it's enemies to lovers in a way. I think that this is probably one of the best like enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers or whatever that there is. In a way, they don't really hate each other, like hate each other, but because of like how their personalities worked out when they first met, how they like kind of got off on a bad start, it's not like they don't like each other for no reason, which is just a huge flaw in so many enemies to lovers books. But I just heavily recommend this book. I'm honestly not a huge fan of romance. I feel like the entire genre is just way too tropey and cliche, except this one just isn't. Like, it's cliche in the way that it's making fun of being cliche, and that I really enjoy in a book. But yeah, that is Book Lovers. If you haven't read any Emily Henry books before, this is where I would start. It's easily my favorite Emily Henry book, and I've read 3 out of 4, so I can't really comment on People We Meet on Vacation, but for the other 3, this is the place to start. The next era that is up on the docket is Fearless. I love Fearless so much. It's one of my favorite albums, unpopular opinion. Oh, I should have said that for Debut, because Debut is easily one of my favorite Taylor albums, and that is like the biggest unpopular opinion, since that's always like everyone's like 10th place. But it is Fearless. I finished this section on November 25th. The prompts that I used are a book where the main character is 15, a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and a book where the main character overcomes their fears. So for a book where the main character is 15, I read House of Yesterday by Deba Zargarpur. Oh, I totally butchered that. I'm so sorry. This is one of the books where I don't really remember much about it, so I'm just gonna find my review. Okay, I think I'm getting like some memories, I want to say. So the main character, Sarah, is a 15-year-old girl who is dealing with her parents' impending divorce. Her family is fixing up a house. She's in that house to help them like fix it up in a way, but she starts seeing ghosts. So that's fun. So she's like dealing with these secrets and these stories of her and her grandmother's past, more specifically, and just kind of like the generational trauma that's been like passed through. It's fun. I remember it being a good story. I think I gave it 4 stars, right? Yeah, 4 stars. I'm just gonna read my Goodreads review. Let's see. Ugh, this book had me sobbing and smiling and shaking with my jaw dropped all at the same time. Loved it so much. Also, Sam is the best character ever. I don't care. Okay, that's right. I remember loving Sam. I don't remember anything about Sam, but I remember like thinking that he was the best fictional character in the entire world. Sort of being really sweet. I don't know. That may be wrong. I just... It's important to say that this book takes inspiration from the author's own Afghan Uzbek heritage. It's very obviously seen, and I feel like there's no representation for that kind of like heritage and culture in the reading world. So heavily, if you need like a YA contemporary read that deals with like paranormal stuff, then I heavily recommend reading this book. It was honestly so interesting, and while it wasn't perfect, it still was pretty good. But next up was a Romeo and Juliet retelling, for which I read One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. This book, oh god, this book. I was originally gonna read a different book for this, being like the very popular These Violent Delights, but I just could not read that. I got so grossed out. I'm sorry. I know it's so popular and I'm sure that it's so good, but I just could not. But Romeo and Juliet witches? Now that I can get behind. I love witches so much. I just love witchcraft and spells and magic, and perfect. Like rivals to lovers witches. Forbidden love witches. Mwah, chef's kiss, perfect. But it wasn't really a perfect book because I did give it 4 stars. That's not my review. Did I not review? I literally only gave it 4 stars on here. I didn't write anything else. Okay, I don't really remember what any of my critiques were, but obviously there were some saying as it was 4 stars, not 5 stars, but nice. Either way, Romeo and Juliet witches, mwah, so good. And like, it's not even just one forbidden love couple between these 2 people. Like, there's 2. Like the 2 families, there's 2 different forbidden couples, and it's insane. Literally don't know who Romeo and Juliet are until the ending of Act 5. Oh, I also remember the bridge being so iconic. Like, I know you're supposed to hate him being Fae and how he's like so messy and greedy or whatever, but like he's just so iconic. I don't get why these families are just always going to him and trusting him with everything, but he's just, mwah, love him. But yeah, that's One for My Enemy. Let's go to the next one. Oh god, I have a word for the next one. So the next one was a book where the main character overcomes her fears. I read Flower Heart by Catherine Bakewell. I read this on my Kindle, so I don't have it like physically, but I really want to buy this book physically so I can like reread it and like fully annotate it because I just love this book so much. So this book is about a girl named Clara who has magical powers, and her powers, she cannot control them. Powers are so insanely strong that she is unable to control her powers and just mentally is unable to, and she accidentally casts a spell on her father, which like makes flowers go out of his heart, which is, you know, where the title comes from. But she has to work hard with her childhood best friend to try and figure out how the hell she can cure her father. At the same time, it's not even just learning how to tame your magic, it's also a story of like learning how to deal with anxiety, mental illness, and feeling your emotions. The way that it is like taught in the magical world is to like hide your emotions and refuse to see them, and that's how you tame your magic. But in reality, it's feeling them, and that's what lets you be powerful and magical. So I just think that this book was just such a good metaphor and symbolism for anxiety specifically, and mental character development. Just, I heavily recommend this story. If it wasn't obvious, I give it 5 stars. I just love this book so much, and I heavily recommend it with all of my heart. If you want like a YA fantasy romance with a childhood to lovers trope, the childhood to friends to lovers trope, which is my favorite. Me personally, it's my favorite trope ever. Just, I love that book so much, and I heavily recommend it to every single person watching this video. Okay, so our next era is Speak Now. This is the one that I just finished, as I previously mentioned. I finished this on December 24th, aka yesterday, aka Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas! Don't think I'm gonna edit this and get it out tonight, so happy belated Christmas. I don't know. The 3 prompts for this was a magical love story, a book set in December, and a book about growing up / not wanting to grow up. Some nice ones. You could probably tell the 3 songs I got inspiration from being Enchanted, Back to December, and Never Grow Up. 3 of my favorite songs from the like base album, but I mean, Castle's Crumbling and I Can See You have gotta be up there, and Timeless, and Foolish One. I love them all, okay? I love Speak Now a lot, but besides that, let's get into the books I read. So the first one was kind of a doozy, not gonna lie. For a magical love story, I read Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellflour. I cannot read my handwriting. Oh my goodness. I unhauled it, so I can't hold up because I just did not like this book. I am a lesbian, and I also love astrology and astronomy and all of that stuff, okay? So picking this up, I was like, astrology sapphic romance? That's my perfect book, dude. It was not. I'm sorry, I'm just not a huge fan of like fake dating, I want to say, when there's literally no reason for it. Like, oh no, you're tired of your brother setting you up on dates? Tell him to stop. If you don't want to date and your brother keeps forcing you to go on blind dates, that's a bad brother. Like, you should respect that boundary. Everyone can take as much time as they need. Like, not everyone needs a relationship right every second, dude. Also, there is sadly the miscommunication trope that leads to a 3rd act breakup and the fastest recovery in the last chapter ever that is so rushed and so horrid. It was awful. I read this book when I was sick, so I had to deal with that too. I think I gave this book 3 stars because I was like, it's just mid. Now that my standards have heightened in books, I would probably give it like 2.5, but I did give it 3. So I'm just like rolling with that because that's like my literal review. But I read that near the beginning of the book, and like I said, I became like an obsessive reader near the very end of last year. So like this is the first full year where I've been an obsessive reader, where like at the same time, not really, because at the beginning of the year, I only read like 1 or 2 books a month, which by the way is good. So like if you read that many books, just know you're doing great, dude. You're doing awesome. I just have no social life and read like every second of the day in my free time. But besides that, what I'm trying to say is just not really a great book, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm sure someone out there loves and adores this book, but just it's not me. I'm not that person, sadly, even though it was like supposed to be the perfect book for me, but no. Anyways, back to another romance book, even though it's not really my thing. We have It's a Fabulous Life by Kelly Farmer for the theme of a book set in December. This is a cutesy little sapphic Christmas rom-com. Also, it has magical drag queens. First and foremost, obviously all drag queens are magical. We know this. But these drag queens have like literal magic powers. Like they're just mwah, chef's kiss. They call themselves but angels too, and they're like literal angels. I love that aspect of the book. Not gonna lie, the angels chapters were easily my favorites. Like they were just Besides that, Bailey and Mariah are also so fun to read about. Some parts definitely did annoy me a bit though. And also, there's a lot of like cringy millennial humor in here. Like, you know, the ugh, like just ugh in italics, all right? Something goes wrong, ugh in italics, but like a little longer this time. Something else goes wrong, ugh in italics again, but even longer this time. And it just like, did that multiple times and I wanted to throw it against the wall. So it refers to dogs as doggos multiple times. Get out. But at the same time, it is still so cutesy, so I can't not love it. Gave it 3 stars though, because just like the critiques were too high to make it anything higher, but the cuteness value was also too high to make it any lower, so that's this one. Yeah, so Bailey is like wants to get out of her hometown of Lanford Falls, but just life says no. She works for her dad's old moving company or real estate company, I don't know. She has been in charge of like this little Christmas fest for her town like every single year, and she wants to go to New York City to just get out for a week. She hates it. Just something always comes up, and this year the new person in charge had to get last minute surgery. Woo! But Mariah comes back to town, baby. Bailey's old best friend from like high school's little sister was like kind of like her little childhood crush, but like that didn't end well, did it? So not only is it childhood friends romance, but it's also kind of like a second chance romance, which like I'm actually not really a huge fan of that, except like it's second chance in a way where they had like one kiss and then it went wrong because of a small miscommunication. But yeah, anyways, Bailey hates Christmas. The drag queens want her to not hate Christmas and want her to fall in love with Mariah and realize that she is supposed to stay in Lanford Falls. Recommend this book. I want to say, obviously it's Christmas right now. This is coming out after Christmas, so next year around Christmas time, this is a good book for you. So there's these 2 dogs named Lulu and Rosie, who are the most adorable little puppies ever. Oh, that's that. Anyways, the final book in the Speak Now era, which is a book about growing up / not wanting to grow up, is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This book I did not really like as much as I did Book Lovers, but it's still a good book, so it gets that. I'm giving this book 4.5 stars. I remember when I read it, because this was actually my first Emily Henry book that I've ever read, I saw myself as Harriet, but now I'm just a Nora, so I can't really say that anymore. So basically, Harriet and Wynne are like, they were engaged and they called it off, except their friends don't know. So when they go back to the beach house that they go to with all of their friends, they pretend they're still engaged. Crazy, I know, right? But yeah, pretend they're still engaged to like make it less uncomfortable between their friend group, because turns out the cottage was on sale. Literally their last week there, and they want to enjoy it with their friends, and news of the breakup probably wouldn't go so well, would it? So they pretend they're still dating, and that's that. Right, so the next era that we have is Red. I love Red. I'm gonna say that for literally every single one of her albums, so get used to it. I finished this section on June 16th. The 3 prompts are a book with red in the title, a book with a purely red cover, and a book that has to do with a big breakup. For the first book, aka a book with red in the title. Hey, I'm back. This is the other book that was from the boycott, so heavily once again participate, you do some research and stuff, so I will be skipping this one as well. Enjoy the rest of the video. Okay, so the next prompt is a book with a purely red cover. This is Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. Spoiler warning for the rest of the video, all 3 of the Good Girls Guide to Murder books are in this video. This series or trilogy or whatever completely changed my perspective on reading this year. Very early on in the year, I picked up A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and then I read one more book, and then I picked this up, and then that same night, I was on such an adrenaline high that I had to start the third book that same night, even though I was so exhausted and it was already like, I don't know, 1 a.m. Also, unpopular opinion, because everyone says this is their least favorite. This one's actually my favorite in the series. The beginning, I will say, like, I agree, was a little bit boring, but not really. Also, the ending, you cannot sit here and tell me that this wasn't the best ending in the series. It's debatable that the first one could be the best one, but this one just completely stuck with me. I remember for my review, I wrote a whole essay for this one. Hold up, let me find it. Yep, here we go. Hold up. Let's put up a photo so it's easier to read. Read along with you. So, I hate this book, in parentheses. I'm crying in bed because that was the best thing I've ever read. My heart is crushed and my gut is wrenched. Everything connects with everything else, including stuff from the first book. I went from hating someone to loving them within 5 pages and had my soul crushed 10 pages later. On the contrary, went from loving a character to hating them within the same amount of pages. You could literally feel Pip's emotions in the pages, and the descriptions of anger and just wanting to scream were amazing. That girl just turned 18 and the amount of pressure on her is insane. I'm currently in a state of shock, but safe to say I'm reading the third book ASAP. So yeah, that's that book. This was like my favorite book of all time for a very long time after I read it, and I'm not like gonna talk about it too much because it's the second book in a trilogy, but just if you have read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and you loved it but you haven't read any of the other books, at least pick up this one. The third one's debatable, but you have to pick up this one. I'm telling you, you have to. Okay, and the final book in the Red era was a book that has to do with a big breakup, and for that I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book I actually just got again on audiobook because I want to reread it. I gave this book 5 stars. Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, okay, 5 stars. It's kind of like a dual point of view story a bit, following both Monique Grant as she's interviewing the Evelyn Hugo to write like a little article about it, but you know, Evelyn Hugo doesn't want an article, she wants something else. She just wants Monique, that's the thing. Essentially, she's interviewing Evelyn Hugo about her entire life, her life story. I just spaced out there, oh my god. She's interviewing her about her entire life story, so we're getting like a dual point of view between Monique going to these interviews, her situation with her ex, and just her going on her day-to-day life, as well as Evelyn Hugo's story. It is just so good. I heavily recommend this book if you haven't read it already, even though it's like one of the most popular books ever. Yeah, that's read. Time for 1989! Alright, so the 1989 era was a very fun one. I finished the section on August 13th. Crazy. I wish I finished it like 4 days earlier, because not only would it be August 9th, aka 89, but that was the day that 1989 Taylor's version was announced, so that would have been amazing, but nope, just slightly did not finish it then. So the 3 themes for this book was a book set in New York, a book published in 1989, and a book about starting your life over. So for a book set in New York, I read They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. It's kind of like a murder mystery type book in a way. That kind of has to do with like a cultish kind of secret society, which is fun, I guess. Will say I did guess the true killer really early on, so that kind of made the experience less enjoyable to me. Seriously, I probably would have unhauled this when I unhauled like half of the amount of books that I own that I'm either never gonna read or read and didn't like, except I own the author's other 2 books that I do want to give like a chance. Like I want to read those 2, give her a second chance, and maybe even a third, because you know I have both of her other books. But if I do read those and really like those, it would be kind of weird if I have 2 out of 3 of the author's collection, because I want all 3 in that case, so I'm keeping it. But I mean, that's really all I'm gonna give for this one, I guess. When you're a senior, you give like tasks or like little things to like the freshmen to like prove their worth or whatever, and they get kind of gruesome at points and like kind of gross. Not very fun. You'll just have to read and see if you want to. Also, it goes very fast. It's like how many pages? It's 327 pages, which is like, it sounds like a lot, except you'll see that the text is huge. It's humongous. It goes very fast. So if the plot sounded interesting, you might want to try it, but also don't have your expectations be super high going in. Alrighty, the next book that I read for a book published in 1989 was Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. I totally mispronounced that name. Oh my god. So this book is a book that I read on my Kindle, and all I remember about this book is how insanely messy it is. Like, it's so dramatic. Think of the most out-of-pocket thing, the most out-of-pocket and unhinged thing that could possibly happen, and I guarantee what happens in that book. Never let them know your next move. Never. Never. Like, it was so unhinged. Like, messy, dramatic. Like, if you're a messy girl who lives for drama and just likes reading about drama, read this book. Read this book. I think I gave it 3 stars, maybe 3.5. I literally don't remember. But just so messy, so dramatic. It's kind of giving Once Upon a Broken Heart in a little way too. So basically, the main character, whose name I cannot remember right now, so the main character is in love with a man who I think's name is Pedro. That's probably wrong. Anyway, so she's in love with a man, but she's like the youngest sister to her mom, and like for cultural reasons, I think the thing where like the youngest sister can't get married, her only job in life is to like take care of the mom. I'm so sorry if that's incorrect. That's just going off of memory. I'm like, if that was wrong, correct me, please. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so the love of her life is set to marry her sister. And he does marry her sister. Because, you know, plot. Out of pocket, unhinged, perfect for you. And finally, a book about starting your life over. I read Girls Like Girls by Hayley Kiyoko. I read this on audiobook, which was an experience. Okay, so I was raised on that song and music video. As anyone my age who came to terms with their sexuality in middle school, that song means a lot, okay? Like, that song was one of the things that like really helped me like process that I don't like men. I'm just not. Like, that's okay. Like, it's not a bad thing to be a woman who likes women. I had very high expectations going into this book, but it didn't really deliver. I'm sorry, I just didn't really like the book. The audiobook especially, like, there were times where like there was so many sound effects that were meant to make it more immersive, but it just gave me the ick. And like there were several times where there was just like really cringe music that just randomly started playing for like a solid 30 to 45 seconds at a time, and I was just like, oh. The music was literally like iMovie music. That's iMovie music. It was like that. Like royalty free iMovie music. That's what that music sounded like. It was just unnecessary music breaks. If you're gonna have a music break, make it be Girls Like Girls. That's the song the story is based off of. So like if you're gonna have a music break, make it be Girls Like Girls. That's all I'm saying. 1989, because I genuinely don't know what else to say about this book. I think I gave it 3 stars. I'll have to double check that. Hold up. Saw your face, heard your name, gotta get with you. Girls like boys do, nothing new. Oh, 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 stars. Yeah, I think I phrased it well in this. I swear to God, that song and music video is what kept me sane in middle school, more specifically early 2020. I was so excited to read this book. I'm not disappointed by it or anything. It just also wasn't really anything special. Not terrible, but also not mind-blowing. I don't know, maybe I'm just a lesbian who reads too much WLW stuff and has very high expectations, or this is just a mid-book. Your guess is better than mine. There you go. And with that, that's the 1989 era. Woo! Okay, so the next era is Reputation. This one was actually the first era that I finished, which is very fun. I finished it on April 16th, The 3 little prompts and topics are a book about revenge, a book where the main character is the villain, and a book about a secret love. So very interesting. So for the book that I read for a book about revenge, I read As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is the 3rd one in the trilogy and also my least favorite. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It has to do with revenge, let me tell you that, in 2 cases, dude. Oh my god. This one, like Water for Chocolate in a completely different way. Like, I'm not comparing these two in the slightest, but all I'm saying, unhinged. So unhinged. If Female Rage was a book, it would be this one. This book, like, I love how in this trilogy you slowly see Pip falling apart, and like it peaks here. Like, it just peak unhinged of Pip. I could talk about this book so much more, but because it's the 3rd in the trilogy, I don't really want to spoil it too much. All I'm gonna say is that Pip is thinking that she might have a stalker. Her and Ravi are investigating that a little bit. So, fun times. Alright, the next one for a book where the main character is the villain, which, by the way, this prompt doesn't even really work too much for Reputation, but like, I literally don't care. It was like seen as the villain before Reputation and like the snake or whatever, but like, wasn't really. Which actually makes the book that I read make more sense, because like, it like, she kind of is the villain, but also not really. Everyone just thinks she is. I don't know. I read A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and I genuinely did not like this book. I'm sorry. Like, I feel like it was just hyped up way too much as like one of the most perfect dark academia books. I'm sorry, I just really did not like it. This was like the first fantasy book that I had read in years at the time I read it, because it was like one of the first books that I read in 2023. I feel like the world building was just took way too long. Also, the most infuriating thing about this book is that the map was at the very end. Like, what's the point of putting a map in the book if you're gonna put it at the end when it won't be able to help the reader instead of at the beginning? I'm sorry, that's just something that's always infuriated me about this book, so I just need to bring attention to it real quick. So the main character, whose name I literally don't remember, and I'm not looking up the review for that, she, like, I don't even remember why everyone hates her. She just has like a bad vibe to her and everyone hates her. Everyone thinks she's dangerous, like she's gonna like kill everyone and like destroy the world, and everyone hates her and avoids her at all costs. Except for this one dude named Orion, and I remember his name is Orion because I had just finished a book where the main character's name was Orion when I picked it up, and I'm like, oh, another Orion, lovely. He's like the himbo hero or something. Like, he just saves everyone, and like it threw off the balance of the things, because like monsters kill students and eat them and make it easier for graduation when the seniors have to like escape a like dungeon of a million monsters. But because Orion was saving everyone and not letting the monsters feed off of them, they've just spent like this stash of monsters in the dungeon is so hungry and huge, and they want to kill everyone. Like, it's essentially impossible for this year's seniors to graduate, and so now Orion's like, uh-oh, my bad. What am I supposed to do now? I think that's what that book's about. I genuinely don't even remember. Like, malefics are the words for monsters in that book. I don't remember anything about that book, and I don't want to look it up because just I don't have it in me to. Anyways, forget that book. I'm done talking about it. The book that I read for a book about a secret love. This is How You Lose the Time War by both Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. This book is a dual point of view between red and blue. Basically, there's these two sides of a time war where one wants to take over with more like industrial and mechanical aspects, and the other one wants to go like full nature, okay? They're fighting against each other with a bunch of time travel and war. These two like just somehow start sending each other's letters and then just fall in love. It's so amazing, so gorgeous. I'm dead. The beginning was insanely confusing to me, and I feel like the sci-fi parts itself kind of like took me out of it because it's constantly changing, but then the love letters kept me in, especially at the end. Just the writing was so gorgeous. Genuinely some of the most just stunning words that have ever been written to describe love, affection, and everything about that aspect are some of these love letters. Let me see if I can find a good example of this. I love you, I love you, I love you. I'll write it in waves, in skies, in my heart. You'll never see, but you will know. I'll beat all the poets. I'll kill them all and take each one's place in turn. Every time love's written in all the strands, it will be to you. Like, excuse me? This is the standard, and I'm sticking at this. So it's sapphic, by the way. They're both women. Just, like, gorgeous time travel, sci-fi, forbidden love, secret love, women love women. Amazingly good book, and that's all I'm gonna say. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, but it's mainly because it was super confusing. This was the book that I read between A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Good Girl Bad Blood, so that kind of like left that. I was on the adrenaline high of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, so I like mentally could not. So if I ever reread this book and like go through it and fully annotate it, I'll have to see where my review still stands. This was like very beginning of the year, so maybe my standards have changed. So we'll have to see, but for now, I just heavily recommend this book. It's so good. If there's a slight camera change, I just got up for a little bit, take a little break to go do some stuff. So, but I'm back. And I'm back for the era of Lover. So I finished this on June 26th, and the 3 themes for this era were a romance book set in high school, a book about the importance of friendship, and a book that has to do with misogyny. It would have been so easy to make this just like a fully romance set, but like Lover is so much more than relationships. Just, I'm being honest. I took inspiration from Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Friends for the first one, but it's nice to have a friend and the man. I just had to reference those in the other 2. But starting off with the only romance one in Lover, I read To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I think I gave this one 4 or 4.5 stars. I cannot remember for the life of me. But looking back on it now, I would go with 4, maybe even 3.5, but I wouldn't doubt it on myself to have given it 4.5 in the past. This book is about this girl named Laura Jean who, whenever she has a crush or falls in love or whatever to a boy, she writes them a letter and stores them in a little box. But suddenly those letters are out everywhere. This book, I feel like it wasn't amazing, but like out of all of the books in the trilogy, this one was easily the best. At least the characters are okay. But in books 2 and 3, it was just dragged on for way too long. Like, 2 and 3 literally did not need to exist. I'm just saying it. Really nothing happens in 2 and 3 that like had to have happened for the series. Like, it could have just been a standalone for number 1, it would have been fine. So that's literally all I'm saying. And yeah, that's just where I stand on that book, and that's really it. The other 2 are gonna get more of a talk though, because for The Importance of Friendship, I read Radio Silence by Alice Osman. This book was my first book of 2023, and I gave it 5 stars, so I started off really nicely. Actually, the first Alice Osman book that I read besides Heartstopper. Such a good place to start. I still need to read Solitaire. I like have a hold on it for Libby. I own the physical one, but just haven't had time to get to it physically, so I'm hoping I get that soon so I can read the rest of Alice Osman's works. But yeah, this book is a literary fiction following Frances as she tries to figure out what the hell she wants to do with her life. Frances loves a little podcast thing called Universe City. She ends up befriending her neighbor and childhood best friend's brother, Alid. And if you have read the Heartstopper graphic novels, like not the show because he's taken out of the show, then you'll know Alid, and Alid is everything. I love Alid with my entire being, but regardless. So you're following Frances and Alid kind of making a friendship bond and having that bond get crushed, and at the same time trying to figure out what happened to Karis, who is Alid's sister and Frances's friend, because she just disappeared one night. And yeah, I just love and adore this book. It's such a good book to read if you're struggling with discovering yourself, discovering what you want to do with your life. I feel like it just... I'm a junior in high school, and in my sophomore year this hit, but like I'm gonna reread this in my senior year and I know it's gonna be horrendous. That is Radio Silence, and I just could not recommend this book enough. And the final prompt for Lover was a book that has to do with misogyny, and I read Iron Widow by Oh god. I know I'm gonna do it so wrong. Zairon Shay Zhao. There's the author. Wait, why is that sticker still on here? I am just realizing the buy one get one 50% off Barnes & Noble sticker is still on there, as well as the Our Monthly pick. Oh god. That may be even worse. I'm just gonna worry about that at a later date. But Iron Widow. Oh, okay, that one came right off. It's just the 50% off one that didn't. So our main character is a young girl who is going to be a pilot to avenge her sister and like kill the man that like killed her, essentially. Because in this world, it's war, but like men are in control of these like pilot stuff and like essentially use women as sacrifices, because like that's just how life works essentially. But our main character, you know, just casually kills the man because she's just such a awesome girl boss, becomes the Iron Widow, which is apparently very scary for these toxic masculinity stans, because yay patriarchy. You know how I said that As Good as Dead is female rage in a book? This is female outrage in a book. Female wrath, female anger, die, dead, bow. That's this book. So if you are a hashtag feminist, you should read this book. That was awful. I'm so sorry. Yeah, just saying it is very gruesome at points, but still. Mind was blown at the ending of this book. I was just like, whoa, 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 whoa. Also, it has to do with a polyamorous couple, so polyamory is very fun, and you should read it if you want more polyamorous representation. Also, sequel comes out soon, so that's very fun. Woo! Alright, so our next era is folklore. This section I finished on April 19th. The 3 prompts for folklore are a book set in the forest, a book that has a love triangle, and a book about escapism. So very fun. The first book that I read for a book that is set in the forest was The Poison Season by Mara Rutherford. Oh my god, I do not remember anything about this book at all. All I remember is that it has like a bit of a forbidden love to it in a way. I also remember that I was obsessed with this book when I first read it. It's the first fantasy I read after A Deadly Education crushed my view on fantasy. So it kind of just made me realize like, oh wait, I kind of do like fantasy a little bit. I just didn't like A Deadly Education. But like this is gruesome, it is culty, it is magical, it is mystical, it is amazing. There were some points where I was like, is this like the 1800s that this is being written? It's like it kind of like the main character, I think her name is Layla. Hold up. Lilo, my bad. Lilo is like a heavy girl boss, except she's also kind of just like a stereotypical woman where like, you know, submissive, kind of just like ugh. But like she's a girl boss, okay? She's a girl boss. Some of like the word choice and diction wasn't really my favorite, but like whatever. I just remember liking this book. I literally cannot remember anything else. That's it. Woo, moving on. Okay, the next book that I have, oh my god, I just remembered this. I'm so stupid. Okay, so the next book I really want to talk about. First of all, I don't have it because I've loaned it to a friend, except I know there's a boycott going on for the publishing industry. I haven't been checking if any of the other books that I've been talking about are like by that same publisher. I'm gonna have to like go through while editing, but oh god. Oh wait. Okay, wait. I'm doing some research on this right now, just a little bit so I don't spread misinformation, and I actually got it messed up in my mind. So the book that I was afraid I would have to skip because it's one of my favorite books of the year is actually from a different publisher, which is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. But a book that I talked about previously is by that publisher, so I'm gonna have to like take that out because I'm not. I'm like 90% sure I've talked about other books by that same publisher as Better Than Movies. But just okay. So I'm gonna like do a lot of research and take out any of the previous books that I've talked about that are in that publisher, which is SMP or St. Martin's Publishing. I heavily recommend doing research into that. I don't want to fully speak on it because I don't want to spread a ton of misinformation because I'm not super educated in that topic, but just please, if you could participate in that boycott, it would be very helpful and beneficial to those who are being damaged by this, and also just do research on the topic. That's all I can say. But that is a very deep and dark topic, but what we're talking about right now is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. So I've spoken on not liking romance too much, but this is a romance book I can get behind, okay? This is about the cutest book ever. I have recommended it to multiple of my friends. I gave it to one of my friends to borrow, and then she gave it back to me, and I automatically handed it to my other friend. Like, you need to read this, because just a few days before, that friend had asked me for romance recommendations, and I was like, this is perfect timing, you need to read this. Like, she's only a little bit in, and she loves it so far, and that is my job for life, because just mwah. Better Than the Movies is the sweetest thing ever. Basically, it's like enemies to lovers, but like not really. It's more childhood friends to lovers, which we know is my favorite trope. There is just so many Taylor Swift references, which is always good to find, as well as there's so many cutesy rom-com movie references, and she's so delulu, okay? Liz is so delulu, it's crazy. But just, yeah, I love Better Than the Movies, and you will too. That's all I'm saying. Finally, for folklore, a book about escapism. This is one that is heavily debatable. I read Caraval by Stephanie Garber. So I did not know what to use for this prompt. There's a prompt from Evermore that goes with a prompt from folklore, which is kind of a spoiler, but it's the first prompt, so I don't care. It's a sequel to one of the folklore books, and I had already read 2 books that didn't have a sequel, and technically Betting on You is kind of a sequel where it's not really, I don't know, except it wasn't out yet, and I don't think it was even announced at that point. I was like, oh crap, what am I gonna do? Caraval, I've been wanting to read these books for so long, and like that could kind of work. Okay, so long story short, there's this girl named Scarlett and her sister named Donatella who want to go do Legends Caraval, which is essentially this week where just go in and everything is fake, except just it's so realistic that it convinces you that it's real, but you have to remember that it's fake. Like, it's not real. It's an experience, but it's not real. But Miss Donatella goes missing first night. Uh-oh. Charlotte and this man named Julian are just going on a journey through Caraval to try and find Donatella through all of these magical fantasy scenarios, and it's just so funky. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It wasn't really my favorite book ever, but like, I don't know. I am obsessed with the Once Upon a Broken Heart book so far. I've only really read the first one, but I'm reading The Ballad of Never After next, like it's my next read. But I just love and adore that book with my entire being, but the Caraval trilogy just didn't hit as hard as that one is so far. If you do want the background knowledge for those books, you should read these. Like, it's not bad, it's just kind of slow in my opinion. You don't have to read it before reading Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is what everyone says. Like, if you don't want to read it, you don't have to. Once Upon a Broken Heart is better, but yep, that's that. Alright, next up we have Evermore. I finished the section on May 13th. The 3 prompts for Evermore were a sequel to one of the folklore books, as I just mentioned, a murder mystery book, and a book set in the time period before the internet. Funky, right? As you know, I'm assuming you all can guess, the first book that I read, which was a sequel to one of the folklore books, was Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This one I liked so much more, I'm just saying it. First of all, we get introduced to Jax, who is so iconic. I love Jax. So it's from Donatella's point of view, which I love Scarlet, but Donatella's point of view is just so much more entertaining. Also, Jax just lit up the series. Like, it was just so slow. Then suddenly he was there and it was from Tella's point of view, and just bam, series is so much better. So we're following Tella as she tries to figure out who Legend is. She can get that information to her quote-unquote friend to pay him back, because her friend was who got her to Legend's Caraval in the first book and essentially saved her and Scarlet from her home island and her dad. But at the very beginning, she gets kissed by Jax, and it's revealed Jax is the Prince of Hearts and she's gonna die. It's insane, right? So if she cannot get Legend's name to him, she could die. So scary. Not only are the stakes higher, Jax is there, and that makes the entire series better. So yeah, that's Legendary. It's the second one to a trilogy, so I can't really talk too much without spoiling the entire trilogy, but there you go. Next up, a murder mystery book. You're never gonna guess what book I read for this one. The Girl Scout to Murder. It's so funny that this is the one I'm talking about last when it's the first one in the trilogy. Good news, I can go more in depth with this one, which is so fun. So for Pip's senior project, she is researching a murder that occurred in her hometown. Andy Bell was murdered allegedly by her boyfriend Ravi Singh, and Ravi Singh, oh my god. Andy Bell was murdered allegedly by her boyfriend Sal Singh, and just the entire town believes it. Everyone sees Sal as a monster, but Pip's like, I don't think so. There's something fishy going on here. Something a bit deeper than what the surface level answer is, okay? I'm gonna research this and find out what. While researching it, he ends up interviewing Sal's little brother, Ravi. There we go. They end up researching this together and find out, oh my god, Sal wasn't the killer. Crazy. That's not even a spoiler. Like, there wouldn't be 3 books if Sal was actually the killer. So, like, shocking. Oh my god. So unhinged. This entire series is so unhinged. I'm sorry. It's filled up my love for murder mystery. So good. You never let them guess your next move. This book specifically and the next one, I did not get the plot twists at all. Like, I could not guess them. The third book was a bit guessable to me, but I don't know, maybe it was just because I read them all in a row, so it like came to me easily. I could not recommend this trilogy enough. I'm sorry. The Girl Scout to Murder, recommend this series so much. Last but not least, a book that is set in the time period before the internet. I read The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. This book I gave 4 stars. Woo! I seriously don't remember much about this book, so I'm gonna have to Goodreads this. Hold the phone. Okay, my review does not help. I read this in early February, so it makes sense that I literally cannot remember anything. I remember being annoyed at how it like jumped from story to story really fast, because like you would get invested in one plot line for like 2 pages and then bam, gone. At the same time, it was so interesting to read about all of these little stories and anecdotes about this girl's life. So short and yet it's so powerful, so I'm keeping this review short and powerful. Read this book. It's very famous, so if you haven't already, you're missing out. Read this book. That's all. Alright, last but definitely not least, we have Midnights! Woo! Finished Midnights on June 17th. 3 prompts were a book made up of a collection of short stories, a book that takes place in the middle of the night, and a memoir. Anyways, let's start out. A collection of short stories I read. Treasury of Folklore, Seas and Rivers, Siren Silkies, and Ghost Ships by Dee Dee Cheney and Willow Wincham. This also is the first book that I've ever annotated, and by annotated I mean just underlining stuff, but like it counts, whatever. It has some gorgeous artwork to it. So essentially it's just ocean folklore. I heavily recommend this book. It's so beautifully written. Tells classic folklore in such an interesting way. There's some beautiful art. There's beautiful art, as I already said. I don't even know what to say. Good book. Good book. Okay, next up, a book that takes place in the middle of the night, and also another collection of short stories, whatever, Up All Night. This is like literally the only book that I was able to find for a book that takes place all night. This is a collection of stories of things that happen in the middle of the night. So fun. I'm not even gonna try listing all of the authors. If there's any good ones, there's your list of them. Yay. The cover is actually so gorgeous. Like, that is definitely what drew me in because it's so pretty, like the little sunset. Anyways, this was just very hit or miss. I think I gave it 3 stars. There were like some that were so insanely good and others that I was like, what the hell did I just read? That was awful. Just very insanely hit or miss. I remember one that was like a knockoff Pokemon Go story. It was like this girl felt so out of place for still liking the fake Pokemon Go game years later after it was no longer popular, and how people made fun of people who still played the game. But like, she found a like popular soccer girl and like popular jock guys who like still like didn't make fun of her and like played the game with her, and I was just like, oh my god, this is literally a story about Pokemon Go. That's literally all I remember. The only thing I remember about this collection of short stories is the Pokemon Go one. Imagine taking together a bunch of like insanely talented authors, and then teenage girl reads a collection of short stories where I'm sure so many of them have just powerful messages, and all that girl can remember months later is there was a Pokemon Go knockoff story in there. Like, that's just imagine being that editor. Anyways, that was up all night. There's a Pokemon Go story in here. Oh, there's one about like a convention, I think. Yeah, and then I think there's one about like a friend group that fell apart. And there's one about prom. And there's one about cheerleading. And yeah. I don't know. Oh, I think there's one about like superheroes or something too. Dude, I don't remember. Anyways, that one. Oh, the ghost one! No, there's a really spooky ghost one where like people die. Like, friend group goes to like this like haunted house or something that was like an abandoned asylum, and like this little kid ends up getting like possessed or something. I don't know. Memory's blurry. It was the very beginning of the year. I'm just wrapping up the 30 books I read for the Taylor Swift Reading Challenge. For a memoir, I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This book I don't have on me because I borrowed it to a friend like this summer and I still don't have it back. So Alona, give me that book back. Anyways, so very good book. I gave it 5 stars, as I do with essentially every memoir I read. Even if like a memoir or like a collection of essays isn't really like my cup of tea, I give it 5 stars anyways because I find it so just not good to rate people's trauma. Imagine being completely traumatized by an event that just completely altered your life and how you view the world, and some random 16-year-old girl on the internet is like, you should have talked more about your self-harm journey. And I'm just, no, that's not how it works. It's insane that so many people write about their lives and feel the confidence to share their trauma with the world and like make people feel seen with that. And I feel like it's not my place to say that it's anything lower than a 5-star worthy. Regardless, Jeanette McCurdy is amazing. I grew up watching iCarly and Sam and Cat, and just knowing now what was happening behind the scenes is just awful. Obviously, this was like the book of the year last year, so I know I'm late to the party with this, but just wow. No, that book just completely blew my mind. There are so many things that people struggle with that you don't know. You just don't know that people are struggling, but they are. And this, you know, Nickelodeon star was struggling horridly, and no one would be able to tell. I could not recommend this book enough. If you watched Nickelodeon as a kid or want more insight on the life of traumatized actors, I heavily recommend this book to you because you should read it. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching my video. I know this was kind of a mess. I don't even want to begin editing this because it's gonna take me ages. Can confirm it's taken me like 3 days and like I think over 7 hours, which is just so fun. But just thank you so much. It truly means the world. If you stuck through until the end, seriously, just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You could like, leave a comment, subscribe. That would be so beneficial to me, but obviously no pressure. It's all good, dude. It's fine. Thank you so much. I really really hope you enjoyed. If you like more bookish content, I have many other little videos on my channel, and I also have a bookstagram, and I mean I have a book talk, but I don't really use it too much. I'm mostly on YouTube, but also bookstagram sometimes. But still, thank you so much for watching. I love you all so much. Bye. Have a great day, night, evening, whatever time it is for you. Bye.